So without further ado, I will turn over the honors of introduction to Dr. Connie Schesmar. So thank you.
Well, I was very happy to have this honor. I first met Sister Maria as an English major here at Georgian Court, and just a few years ago, not very many. And she introduced herself to the class as Sister Maria Cordis, but then she said, "I would like you to call me Sister Maria, because Cordis has hard sounds in it, and Maria is very soft and gentle." Now, I had never heard anybody talk like that, nor had I ever thought that way about language, but that started me on my journey into the beauty and the power of language. And Sister Maria's love of literature, of writers and poets who convey great thoughts in great words, as she puts it, was contagious. And although I had known from a very young age that I was going to be an English teacher, whatever that meant to an 8-year-old, it was Sister Maria who helped me see how I could bring that love of language into the classroom and into my life. I remember sitting in her classes, listening to her talk about the great writers and recite incredibly long passages with the book closed on the lectern in front of her. But I still love to listen to her speak no matter what the venue. She can move from wisdom to compassion to humor to verbal karate with the turn of a phrase. And she's not only a model of mercy, but she's a model of the power of the word. Now, Sister Maria, you probably know, has done much more than teach at Georgian Court. She graduated summa cum laude from Georgian Court and earned a master's degree and a doctoral degree in English from Fordham University. She chaired our department from, I think it's 1965 till 2000, and with a break from 1974 to 1980 to serve as president of the college for a little while. During her presidency, Georgian Court introduced its first coeducational graduate and undergraduate programs. The business administration major was reinstated after a 10-year absence. Enrollment increased more than 70%, and the campus was placed on the National Register of Historic Places. So we might be asking her back someday. But her first love is teaching those great thoughts and great words. She was a recipient of the President's Award for Teaching Excellence in 2003. And I think she's so successful in transferring that love of language and literature to her students because she herself is a poet. Her poetry has appeared in many literary and general periodicals, including the Sewanee Review, Continuum Quarterly, Catholic World, Sign Magazine, Sisters Today, and most recently, our Georgian Court Fountain Spray. It's fitting that this poetry reading takes place during Georgian Court's Centennial celebration because Sister Maria has been and still is so much a part of Georgian Court that we celebrate. She is a newly inducted member of GCU's Court of Honor, which honors outstanding alumni. She's been and still is the heart of our department, a leader in the Georgian Court community, an excellent teacher, and as you'll hear this evening, a great poet. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce Sister Maria.
Thank you, Connie. Thank you, Pam. I thought that the best way to begin this evening would be with some little poems, just to get you in a mood. Let's call these appetizers, just to get started. I thought perhaps you might like to hear some triolets. Interesting little word. The microphone's not on. Now you can hear me? Yes. Sorry about that. I was saying, for those of you who are in the back, that I thought we'd begin with some little appetizers, little poems, and I'm going to share with you 3 triolets. Triolets are fun because they're so tiny you can't pack much into them. It's like a little evening bag or something that's just big enough for a handkerchief. The triolet is only 8 lines long, and the first and second line, not the rhyme, but the whole line, the first and second line are also the 7th and 8th lines, and the first line is also the 5th line, so you can see that you have very, very little to play with outside of that basis. So these appeared in Continuum Quarterly, these 3 triolets that I'm sharing with you. The first of them is a memory of mine from being a child and seeing a turtle right out in the middle of the road and going out to rescue it and bring it to safety. I don't know whether my mama and daddy would have liked me to be out in the middle of the road, but it was fairly safe in our country streets with hardly any cars going by. So this is what I said to the turtle in my triolet all these many years later. I'll carry you over, since you're here in the middle. From concrete to clover, I'll carry you over. You're not meant for a rover, and your motive's a riddle, but I'll carry you over, since you're here in the middle. Ah, thank you. My mother thanks you. My father thanks you. The turtle thanks you. The second one, many of you may know I'm a gardener, and I love moss, nice, beautiful, velvety moss. Well, around here, the squirrels love to eat their pine cones as if it's corn on the cob. They hold it this way, cute little paws, and back and forth, and then toss the corn cobs, right, corn cobs. So I sweep them up, and pretty soon they do it again, until eventually they win. I know they'll win. So this second triolet is called To a Squirrel Tasting Triumph. He wins, I lose. Now you munch the last cone, and you've littered the moss with the gnawed cobs you've thrown. Now you munch the last cone. So I'll leave you alone, though you're certain to toss that last maddening cone on my poor littered moss. And the third, I think, is my favorite. It's called To a Blue Jay Strutting and Preening. Have you noticed that when a blue jay is flying, he is sheer glory, he's just exultant. But watch him when he's down on the ground. He struts this way. He owns the world. And I looked at the blue jay one day and I thought to myself, you know, you look very much like a drum major. But the only problem is, what happens to the drum major if nobody's following? So, this is my little triolet. Sit down, darlings. There's plenty of room. It takes more than one bird to make a parade. Or haven't you heard that you're only one bird? A drum major's absurd when the band's been delayed. It takes more than one bird to make a parade. This one I call The Rising Dark. It's the first poem of mine that appeared in the Sewanee Review, which made me very happy because that is the oldest literary periodical in America. I've been there several times since, but this was a special delight since it was the first. Have you ever been at a sunset situation in which it doesn't look to your eyes as if the sun is setting, but more as if the dark is rising? Picture that in your mind if you can, that the dark seems to be coming up rather than the sun going down. This is a Petrarchan sonnet. I won't play with form too much for those of you who aren't form-oriented, but the Petrarchan sonnet with the rhyme scheme, night, sweep, seep, light, right, reap, leap, night, sky, gift, rift, thigh, drift, sigh. The Petrarchan sonnet form. And I said to the sun, no, this is not a sunset, not tonight. The sun lies limp before the ardent sweep of driving darkness, and the faded seep of pastel color draining light from light is not at all his doing. Her proud might and panther pounce have captured all his sky. Surrender unconditional, no gift. Yet all eyes face the west and praise the rift of color gray divided. Yet all eyes face the west and praise the rift of color gray divided. Voices vie in praising him. I hear the darkness drift past her unnoticed glory with a sigh. Isn't it true? Thank you. No applause needed. I love every bit of it. Isn't it true that sometimes one person is praised for something that is really the work of someone else? I watch the darkness drift past her unnoticed glory with a sigh. Interesting little observation that you might like. When I received different letters about this poem, when it appeared in the Sewanee, someone said in a letter, probably more than one person said, that they liked very much the black and white conflict. And it was written at the height of the race riots and the black and white conflict in this country. And my Panther Pounce, there were Black Panthers at the time, Black Panther organization. So when that was praised, I thought to myself, yes, I put that in, and they saw that I did. Then I heard from other people who spoke about the man-woman conflict. And of course I had intended that. No offense, Bill, Bob, Father, etc. But I had intended that. I had intended the man and woman. I intended that he is the power and, Anthony. Have to give credit to all my men. He is the power, it seems, and she is the underlying power, actually. But then I received a letter that spoke about how much the person enjoyed my consideration of the dark night of the soul. And that I hadn't put in. I hadn't put it in. And I always say to my students, those of you who have ever had me for class might remember my saying it, that poems often mean more than the poet himself or herself intended. That if you, as reader, find there something that the poet didn't intend, it's not because you're a bad reader, it's because you're a wonderful reader. Because you're a wonderful reader. Emerson says there is creative reading as well as creative writing. I call Encounter. It appeared in Continuum Quarterly. Once, years ago, when the buildings had not yet risen past Apollo, Sister Eduarda and I, hi sister, were out taking a walk one evening after supper, and I'm sure that she remembers well that the night was a particularly lovely one, and the trees, the beautiful white oaks, were standing in pools of myrtle, not the cultivated little periwinkle of gardens, but the natural little wild myrtle with its brilliant blue. And they began to be, as the night was beginning to settle in, more and more and more fireflies. And we were walking and remarking on how beautiful it was, but then all of a sudden we just stood still and just gasped because one tree, just a little bit distant from the others, was suddenly filled with fireflies. And it was so beautiful that I think we stopped talking and came back in silence, just thinking about what we had just seen. And I never went back, I don't think you did either, to see that tree again, because that was a special experience, and it wouldn't have looked the same second time. Even if it did look the same, it wouldn't look the same, if you understand what I mean. Here, the form that I used is one of my own invention. I was showing you patterns that you're familiar with, like the sonnet, but this is a pattern of my own invention. The quatrains have rhymes that are double, such as, let me find some, others, brothers, reflecting, projecting, twilight, wild night. The alternate rhyme in each quatrain is not perfect. It's an off rhyme. It doesn't match completely. For example, one tree, privacy, one tree, serenity, etc. It matches, but not quite. It only comes into completion with a true chiming rhyme at the end, when I am by now knowing what I'm going to do with it. So I wrote this poem. As I said, it appeared in Continuum Quarterly, and I gave it to Sister for her birthday that fall. It's called, as I said, Encounter. I wrote it in the singular. I left her out. The white oak stood in daylight with the others. He was anonymous. Who sees one tree standing among trees, even if his brothers shy off a bit to give him privacy? The white oak waded myrtle pools, reflecting the blue of all blue things. Who sees one tree waiting in sky, when other trees projecting from myrtle share the same serenity? But white oak, filled with fireflies at twilight, wakes into glory. Since I saw my tree wait, myrtle pooled and firefly flooded, while night delayed a moment, I shall always be that white oak's intimate. Oak, myrtle, fire. The fire brought recognition, but that tree I've never seen since, nor do I desire to meet again. For what is there to see? I think he vanished, drowned in blue and fire and pools of night. Springs faded as they came. I never searched. It wouldn't be the same. The Sewanee Review accepted from me, but I didn't know they did, a sheaf of poems. I had sent them a sheaf of poems that made up a whole Mass sequence. It included all sorts of crazy additions to the Mass, for which the Lord doesn't blame me a bit. For example, the epistle was the epistle of St. Philip to the Ethiopian eunuch. The gospel was the gospel according to St. Martha. The whole of it I sent off to them, and I hadn't heard anything, so I presumed that they were going to send it back, but were a little bit delayed in doing so, until I heard from, this was when Alan Tate was still editing the Sewanee, and I heard from Mr. Ralston, who was his associate, saying, I know that Alan Tate has written to you to say how much he enjoys this, but I just wanted to add my own little word. Well, Alan Tate hadn't written to me, but I was very glad to hear that they had accepted it. And I just want to share with you the post-communion, the sound of colors have always fascinated me. I think all of us have a certain synesthesia, a certain seeing of sounds, hearing of colors, some of us more than others perhaps, but you know, I think, what colors you associate with laughter, what colors you associate with melancholy and so on. So the poem grew out of something that I wrote as a girl. I wrote a book of poems when I was a girl. None of them were very good. They were fine for my age, but they weren't very good, so I haven't kept them. But I do remember that one of them was simply called The Sounds of Colors, and I think that this more mature poem grew out of it. It's, as I said, the post-communion is the last poem in the sheaf, and it says, from bluebells of dawning to velvety midnight, you draw this our day. Father, we pray, fill hours between with works tight-webbed scarlet, with bright yellow laughter, with prospects as green as a frond bravely ferning, with violet yearning, with memories move as a train call at twilight, with peace, white as silence that follows on prayer. Fill this our day, we pray. Father, be there. I think a simple Father, be there is a good way to end a Mass. A little bit of background for this next one. When I was doing my doctoral work at Fordham, it was a 3-hour trek from here to there, an hour and a half by bus to Port of Authority, another hour on the subway to the Bronx, A train and D train, then across Concord to Fordham Road and up to Rose Hill and so on. So by the time we arrived, it was a 3-hour trek in one direction. When I was doing my doctoral work, it was in the early 60s, and we had not yet heard the I Have a Dream speech. We had not yet seen the transformations that would come in the relationships of black people and white people. My classmate Naomi Jones was the first black girl who graduated from Georgian Court. And we were advanced, considering that most colleges of the day didn't have any students who were not of the same ethnicity. So it was a newness, the concept of putting microphones into the faces of people on the subways and saying, what do you think about this or that? And they never caught somebody who belonged in Ebony magazine, someone with an eloquent voice, someone who was a paragon. It was always a poor fellow who was thinking, oh, don't put that microphone in my face. No, and so when I would be going up to Fordham, with each subway stop, more white faces went off and more black faces came on, all the way up. By the time I got up to the Bronx, it was completely black. And it was, how should I describe it? Well, a word I use in the poem is impersonal. There was no question of problem, but I was used to everybody smiling at me all the time, everywhere. After all, a nun and a habit, people smile at you all the time. And you smile back. Don't you do that, girls. Get into big trouble. But the impersonality, I looked down, they looked down, or we both looked at the ledge with all of those toothpaste ads and Brotherhood posters. And so I thought to myself, so often, if I were black, and that's the basic concept of this poem. The Sign magazine did something very nice with it, which I hadn't expected. They put it on a black page with a quiet imposition of a subway car on a black page and the print in white to make it the black and white that I was thinking of. So I call it Subway to the Bronx. If I could be black, I could reach you, my impersonal brother. I could stand beside you before the hot TV cameras when you are trapped there. Not tailored ebon image, but man of the Harlem street, fed to the rapacious camera, ungrammatical, inarticulate, shy. If I could be black, holy black, holy black, H-O-L-E, H-O-L-Y, W-H-O-L-L-Y. If I could be black, holy black, I could. I could reach you. I could taste Mississippi dust and smell Chicago courtyards and hate the dirt with you and be at home where you are. Then I could shoulder your black burden of laughter and the rage-raising weight of kindly condescension. And you would know that I do not condescend, and you would cease to condescend to me. But, brother mine, I seem no sister to you. You see me, hands folded, quiet-eyed, white within my black and white. One unmoving by your passion, unsharing in your burden. You sit on one side, I on the other, and your black gaze travels impersonally away from me to rest on the Brotherhood posters and toothpaste ads, smiling above my white and alien face. If I were black. Connie said that I was president once. Such a ridiculous thing to happen. That was before we went in for such logical things as search committees and so on. They just said, do it. And I said, yes, sister. There's a song in Oklahoma. Adewani sings, I'm just a girl who can't say no. So, of course, I had to say yes. But fortunately, the term of presidency is a term. So, 74 to 80, and then I could get back to the classroom where I belong. But in the meantime, I'm glad that I had the chance. It was, I thought of it as a time when I was riding backward in a train. If you're riding in the seat that faces backward, if anyone asked me how things were going, I'd say, well, everything I've seen so far looks good. Just didn't know where it was going next. Well, the Association of Independent Colleges sent me a little request when I'd been president for about 6 months, absolutely ignorant, and they asked for, let me quote them exactly, 600 words or less on any aspect of higher education on the national or state level. Oh, I don't know anything about education. So I thought about it for a couple of days, and then finally, this is what I sent to them. I think it wasn't what they expected, but it was what they published. I call it 600 words or less. And I began, for those who didn't know what the letterhead said, with what they said, and then I broke it apart. 600 words or less on any aspect of higher education on the national or state level. Less than 600, of that much I'm sure. 6 months as president leave me less than 600 words expert. National or state, my natural state turns wordless in the face of generalities, abstractions, aggregates. I know one campus, know it well, know or assume I know each snowflake, each crocus, each cardinal's shiny nest, each shining sheet of sophomore hair, each smile across a senior dinner plate, know years and years of what it's like to be here, to teach and live here, root myself here, home. Higher education, useful phrase, on which I'm this much expert. I know that Meg cries over Yeats, Fran over money. Mary wants three careers at once, all good. Miss X needs lab assistance, Dr. Y needs full professorship, and Sister Z needs time to be. On any aspect, maybe this will do. One aspect, as any other, I suppose, is the rows upon my desk, the reports stacked on my table, and the dreams held in my heart. This one is Siwani Review once more. I have a little Wedgwood vase, just this tall, very pretty little thing. Many of you know how much I love flowers. For some reason, to this day, I like it best empty. No flowers in it. When I lived in Mercedes, as I did for 30 years with my students there, every once in a while somebody would come running up. Since it is so tiny, they'd just have little flowers. They'd perhaps found lily of the valley in the spring and filled it, or the lovely bittersweet that used to grow along the paths back here, the lovely bright orange, which looked pretty in the Wedgwood blue. And I always loved it and loved them for it, loved them anyway, flowers or no. But for some reason, I was happy when the flowers were finished, so that the little vase could be empty again. And I didn't think I knew why I felt that way until I wrote this poem. Sometimes when you say it, you discover it. You find out the why of things just by the writing. I call it Covenant. A rose can fill me, one rose. Here I stand, empty and waiting. The vase you see is speaking. A rose can fill me, one rose. Here I stand, empty and waiting, so it seems, until kind hands bring to my quiet blue the spring and lilies, or in burning bittersweet the fall. Thus is the myth enacted, year by destined year. I too am kind. I hold their proffered flowers, docile till they fade and leave me peaceful, total. No one knows that deeper than the eye can see, I hold invisibly a rose. I think that what I didn't know was that the little vase symbolizes to me a completion that one doesn't necessarily understand, but which is there. But I don't think I knew that until I wrote the poem. You say it and then you understand it, sometimes rather than the other way round. I heard an anecdote once about a little girl who was admonished by her mother, since she was so prone to exaggeration, always say what you mean. And she answered, "But Mommy, how do I know what I mean till I hear what I say?" And I think that's one of the reasons that we write. This one is called The Rooted Heaven. It appeared in Sisters Today. Do you remember how St. Paul says that he had a vision of heaven and he was taken up into heaven, whether in the body or not in the body, I know not, but he was taken up into heaven, and then he finds when he gets there that eye has not seen, nor ear heard, nor has it entered into the mind of man what God has prepared for those who love him. So, this is my thought, because I don't want to go up to heaven, ever. I want to have my heaven right here. Right here. If Scripture says there's going to be a new heaven and a new earth, what's the point of the new earth unless I can walk around on it? I want everything in heaven that I've ever had here, right down to my beautiful collie at home. Everything, everything. So, my poem is called The Rooted Heaven. Rooted. And I argue with Paul. That's always a good thing to do with your favorite scriptures, argue with them. Eye has not seen. After your high-hurled journey, remember he was taken up to heaven, whether in the body or out of the body, he knows not. Eye has not seen. After your high-hurled journey, I can't refute you, Paul, but I have seen all heaven dear to my eyes. Is there more? God's face is seen by heart and not by eyes. Later then, clearer, surely not surprise. Doubtless star-sailing souls keep lifelong quests, searching, exploring, never harbored home, the ever-seekers still unsatisfied. But more for me, mine is already mine. I've seen snowbirds and rain clouds, counted stars, and am content with their arrangement, fixed yet free, their careless golden scattering across the crumbled black page of the sky. Grass debonair and crocus casual, snow remnants reminiscing here and there at the road's edge, nibbled away by green and greedy April. All these make my heaven. No heaven without snow, please. Snow is holy, and praises God with all my gift of praise. Heaven above, below, on every path. A cracked stone, sudden open pearly gate, sacred and white within its secret brown, leads straight into the mansion of the Lord, where there are many chambers. Mine is here. It holds one wicker chair where I can throne in high estate, one rug where I can curl in lowly listening. It holds a book or two that I must take along with me, who can take nothing. Where your treasure is, there is your heart also. My treasure's here. Eye has not seen. I look upon the Christ who watches with new eyes, speaks words as new as bright tomorrow, holds out strong new hands, and walks within my garden here and now. God's face is seen by heart, not by eyes, later then clearer, surely not surprise. I can't refute you, Paul, but I have seen all heaven dear to my eyes. Is there more? Only the keeping, the forevering. The only more is that forevermore. And a last little one. This is from Sisters Today again. If any of you want anything that you don't yet have, sometimes it's in the waiting that the having happens. So I call this little poem, Having is Waiting For. Having is waiting for. Though you have been kept waiting many a day, through storms of stars and calms of partial cloud, while candles lit have sparked their lives away, and all the moments told themselves out loud, the time will come. And in the meantime, wait. Although no footstep falters at the door, there's glory in the waiting. Set the plate, set fork and glass, having is waiting for. And the last one that I wanted to share with you this evening, Connie mentioned that I spoke at Convocation back in 2003, and some of you who were there then may remember this. I used it to conclude my Convocation speech. Yay! They were there. My theme straight through it was the fact that all of us are both aspirers and acceptors of what is here at the moment, the question of the aspiration. I was asked by some of our sisters to write a poem for the cover of their Easter issue of Mosaic magazine, the little magazine that they send out to benefactors. And the thought that they asked me to write about was resurrection. And what came to my mind was the fact that the Lord goes straight up, but that's not the way we go. That's not our resurrection. We rise like little fledgling birds who try out of the nest and fall, plop down into the nest, and then up again, and then back again, and are so glad that there are twigs there to catch us on the way, and then a little bit higher, until eventually the whole world is ours. But that doesn't mean that we don't still love the nest, that we don't still want the nest. I wanted the lines of the poem to hover and to float and to fly as a bird would. So there are great distinctions in the length of line and so on. as fledglings dare new feathery feats, on wings sky-seeking, nest returning, so the springs of spring in us spring rising and return. We yearn for what we know not, and for what we know. We go on wings, uncertain in their flight, fearing delight, and tentative and slow, grateful for twigs below to soften our return. Yet, having dared the air, at last we know why feathers grow. We know, too, some slight newness in the world created by our wings as they unfurled a little. Feathered now with grace, we rise a little higher, making space to be sure that we can soar. We rise and hover there, see earth and air and nests and aspiration in our care. For the forever risen in his flight has made it right that fledglings dare.